the chairman of Migration Watch in UK. Thank you so much for joining me. So,
good morning, Richard.
Good morning to you. And finally, we have got a little bit in the papers of some views from the two candidates about what they would do. We'll come on to that in a minute. But firstly, I just wanted to catch up with you on this report that came out this week from the Chief Inspector of Borders, David Neal, about some of the things that's gone on in Border Force, dealing with the migrants coming across the Channel. Pretty shocking stuff, wasn't it? I mean, lots of people absconding, disappearing from hotels, not even taking their proper surnames, and so on, not taking biometric fingerprints and things. I mean, how bad is this?
It was awful, really bad, actually, and I think worse than anyone was even imagining. I think that they've probably addressed some of the issues now. We were pointing to all that was going on for months and months and months beforehand. We even now, frankly, they are being placed in hotels, and whilst the biometric stuff is all being done when they arrive, the fact is there's still no real control over those once they're placed in hotels, safe hotels, we're told. What does that mean?
Well, that's a very good question. What does that mean? And to any of you, Alp is with me for the next 20 minutes or so. If anybody's got any questions or any experiences, do you live near a hotel that's been taken long-term by the Home Office to fill it with illegal migrants? Then give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Alp will take your questions, your calls, your thoughts, any which way, so that we get that interaction. You might have an experience, you might live on the South Coast, or you may be next to one of those hotels. So you're pretty concerned about this report, which clearly is shocking. But have you got any confidence that anything's actually changing as we speak?
Not to any significant extent, frankly, because, as I said, they're going into hotels, but then it seems that they're not keeping a close eye on them, and they're able to abscond anyway. What I would do now is send in the inspector again, just to see that what we are told has been done really is in place, because I have my doubts that there is any real absolute control.
Because what was really shocking was this report was given to the Home Office on the 24th of February, and they sat on it until this week, until they were literally shamed into producing it, because David Neal himself issued his own press release saying they were still sitting on it. Yes,
I'm afraid that the Home Office over the last few years has had a habit of sitting on unpleasant and hard-hitting reports. To be fair to Priti Patel, I think that a lot of what he says, she has done her best to address. The fact is that when it comes to the practicalities of the sort of system that you put in place, it's inadequate. And that's the one thing that comes out not only with the Chief Inspector's report, but with Alexander Downer's report as well, where the whole structure of the immigration system, of the asylum system, really needs change, root and branch, if anything is going to happen.
And I guess the question is, actually, can it change with the existing leadership in Border Force and in the Home Office? Or actually, does it need, essentially, do we just need to be honest and say, look, the department's not fit for purpose, and it essentially needs a new team that actually believe in what they're doing? You know, that's my thought. Because you've got to find solutions to the problem, and if it isn't working, then we've got to do something differently, haven't we?
Well, it's all about the political backing, actually. Civil servants, most of them, at least in my day as a civil servant, you would do what the politicians told you to do.
But I think things
they
have
were
changed.
Answerable, you were not. I don't think that... I think too much is made, frankly, of the fact that somehow civil servants have taken over the policy and are running with it. That's not so. It's the political control that is necessary and is inadequate and has been inadequate.
Interesting, but we, you know, Priti Patel talks a great game and always says she wants to get on top of it, but there's often been lots of inferences that actually she's being hindered by people in the Home Office, and indeed like the Civil Service Union, who've tried to block some of this stuff.
Well, some of it they have legally tried to. I think that's wrong. That's appalling, frankly, that any civil service union should be working against the government that its union members are actually a part of. I mean, that's just a nonsense. I think that it's all political, it's all to do with the legislation in place, and it's all to do with the way measures that are introduced are implemented. That's what's going wrong, not civil servants suddenly deciding, I'm not going to do this.
Interesting. Yeah, I've got real concerns about that. I think we've got Stephen on the line with a question for you, Alp. Stephen, a very good morning to you. Thanks for giving us a buzz. Have you got a question for me or Alp on this issue?
Yes, I do. Good morning to you both. Alp Mehmet, I'd like to know, because he probably has a better handle on the numbers than you do, no disrespect.
Definitely he does. Absolutely right, Stephen.
But why the Conservatives in their manifesto, on which they voted in, and for Brexit as well, was to get migration, we're talking net migration figures, down into single figures. Now, or whatever that meant, into the hundreds. Now, all that's happened since then is net migration has, forget about illegal immigration, because that's all everyone's talking about, which is smaller numbers. The net migration into the country has gone up massively. And no one's talking about it. It's not mentioned. It's all swept under the carpet. And
Great question,
Rishi
Stephen.
Sunak also mentioned that he wants to see more visas given to the Asian community to come in to start businesses. Now, I'm afraid, what's wrong with starting businesses in our own country? Why do we have to get, foreign people coming in
Stephen,
to start?
Great question. Let's see what Alp says.
Stephen, thank you so much. Before we came on air, this was exactly the point that I made to Richard, as he will testify. You're absolutely right. The one question that all the candidates, bar one, for the aspiring prime ministers have ducked has been overall net migration, which is now probably running at the highest ever. We don't know because there are no figures. However, we do know that, for example, there were 1 million long-term visas issued in the year to March this year. Now, that is higher than ever before, if that turns out to be the case, and I'm pretty sure it will. The fact is that 60% of people want net migration to be reduced. Something like 80% of Conservative supporters want it reduced, and yet they keep banging on about something that, frankly, I very much doubt they will ever be able to control, and that's cross-channel illegal migration.
And we've got this situation where essentially we've had record visas issued last year, and yet we seem to, we're told there's a labour shortage, which there is, and yet we've got record numbers of people on out-of-work benefits. And so it feels like it's a vicious circle in completely the wrong direction.
We did a bit of research not so long ago where we found that there were 4 million people who were either out of work and looking for work, or indeed were already in work but felt they were underemployed and had capacity to do more work. So there are millions of people out there, particularly with the temporary, seasonal, barista type of jobs. There's all sorts of, and any number of young people who would give their eye teeth to do it, and yet employers tend to go for the cheaper option, frankly, and that's bringing in people from overseas.
Stephen, if you're still on the line, does that help Alp's answer?
Yeah, but one thing that I would just add to that is that all of this is putting massive pressure on our overstrained infrastructure already.
Absolutely.
Whether it be housing, everyone's saying, well, it's build more houses. Why do we have to build more houses?
Absolutely.
Why do we have to pump more money into the bottomless pit of the NHS where everyone can come in and use it free?
Funnily enough, Stephen, sorry to interrupt you, but Kemi Badenoch was the only one who made this point, that unless we tackle overall immigration and bring numbers down, we can never build enough houses, frankly. It will not happen. That's why it's so important to reduce overall net migration by a lot.
Stephen, thank you so much for that great call with that question about, because obviously there's illegal immigration, but there's also lawful migration, and our population in England in the last 20 years has increased by in the order of 10 million, hasn't it? So Stephen's quite right, that pressure on all the public services, housing and infrastructure.
Well, we've seen in the census report that population went up by 3.5 million. 3.5 million in 10 years, 6.6%. That's extraordinary. What is more, we heard from the government that 60% of that was because of immigration, and it was. But that's direct immigration. No one takes any account of the children born to new arrivals. And the fact is, if you take that into account, the population increase that we've seen over the last 10 years is something like 80 to 90% the result due to immigration in one way or another.
And, you know, the reality is that if the economy is growing fast and you've got a genuine labour shortage, then if you haven't got enough homegrown people to carry it out, then, you know, you need people from overseas. But that hasn't been the situation. We've had low growth, haven't we? And all it's done is to actually keep wages down.
Well, yes. I mean, one thing that's happened over the last 10, 15 years is that the gross domestic product, GDP per head, the cake, the overall cake, although it's grown, each slice that's available is actually smaller,
it hardly
if not
moves.
the same.